happy.
So I'm gonna have to fan myself because I'm very hot.
It's okay. So happy to welcome you back to the UK Crime Book Club.
Thank you, Caroline.
Introduce yourself and tell people a little bit about your book.
Yes, so I am Sid Moore, and I am the author of Now About Witches. The Drowning Pool was my first one, which is about a local myth. A legend in the town where I live in Leigh-on-Sea, about a sea witch called Sarah Moore, which is really interesting to look at. Witch Hunt is about Matthew Hopkins' witch hunt in 1645 to 1647. And then I started the Essex Witch Museum series, of which this one is to come out. And this is Strange Tricks. And the Essex Witch Museum series is, so I'm just trying to get that in short. It's really difficult because everything's back to front here. Okay. This is the Essex Witch Museum series. People just, there's two characters, Rosie Strange and Sam Stone, and they go out and they investigate lots of mysteries that are occurring from the Essex Witch Museum. And I guess some of you probably know as well, Caroline. She described it as Scooby-Doo for grown-ups, and I quite like that.
I thought it's a really good description.
Yeah.
I love the Essex Witch Museum series. Strange Tricks has illustrations. Can you start off by telling us a little bit about the illustrations, because they're wonderful?
Yeah, so the Strange Tricks is, actually I can show them to everybody as well. So Strange Tricks, so there's kind of two stories in Strange Tricks, and one of the stories relates to the contemporary mystery, I guess you can call it that. The other story which unfolds is the sort of the umbrella story of the series, which is more concerned with the main character, Rosie Strange, and her parentage. Becomes quite a revelation for her. Her father isn't who she thinks he is, neither is her mother. And in this, she finds a journal which is related to her. Well, it belonged to her real biological mother, who she learns died in mysterious circumstances many years ago. So Rosie, as she starts in this book, she kind of like becomes more like her mother Celeste, who is a believer. But Rosie, in the beginning, she doesn't really believe in magic. At the end of this book, there have been revelations that she can't really deny anymore. So anyhow, Celeste is a believer, and so her journey through, and her journal is illustrated by tarot cards. So that is one, and these were drawn by my sister. I sort of asked her to focus on the Rider-Waite pack, which is of tarot, but and this is the story relates to the all the cards relate to what happens to Celeste, the Chariot. Do you read tarot, Caroline?
I've tried. I'm not.
You tried?
I've tried.
Did you say?
Yeah, I'm not very good at things like that. I have lots of pagan friends though who do read tarot and collect it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that tarot is a great mystery, because nobody's really sure how it came about. You know, was it a pack of cards, or there's lots of theories that maybe gypsies used it, but it's definitely been used by fortune tellers across the years. The Rider-Waite pack was from the 1920s, so that's the Empress. But of course, there's loads more tarot packs which go back much further than that. Anyhow, so the last card in the book is this one, and I think it leaves it on a cliffhanger.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Yeah. So that card is the Tower, and in tarot it refers to something which happens to someone where it's almost like it's such a revelation, or it's so shocking that it's sort of one of those moments. It can be interpreted positively, but it can be interpreted negatively as well. So I think we all know, if you followed the story, you know how to interpret it. But of course, Celeste doesn't when she draws it, and Rose is getting closer to the truth there as well. So, and I really wanted them in because I felt that there's such a visual way of telling a story as well. And also bringing in, I'm really interested in esoterica anyway, and symbolism. And it's just lovely to have something like that. I wanted them in colour really, but I think that was too expensive. So it's great to have them in there as kind of like signposts to the plot, and further revelations, of course.
So I love illustrations in books. And one of my favourite questions to ask at interviews, I don't know if I asked you this before, is if you'd make a graphic novel version of one of your books.
Yeah, I'd love to. I mean, I can't draw at all, but a graphic novel version of one of them would be brilliant. I mean, actually, when it's funny enough, because Caroline, I know you started reading The Drowning Pool, and when I was writing The Drowning Pool, I was also the editor of a culture magazine just in South Essex, and one of the guys who was a graphic comic artist. He illustrated part of The Drowning Pool and part of Witch Hunt as a kind of comic strip, which was brilliant, really, really good. And I don't know if I'd actually do a graphic novel of a book that's already happened, but I think I'd really love to write a graphic novel as an episode of the Essex Witch Museum, a new one. That would be brilliant. Yeah, I'd love it. It'd be really interesting to see Rosie and Sam visualized.
Do you have a really clear image of Rosie and Sam?
What? I think I lost you there, Caroline.
Yeah, you keep freezing a little bit.
Okay, sorry, did you? Sorry, I'm on the hotel Wi-Fi. I'm not sure what to do. Maybe I can move closer. Right, hang on. You see how messy my hotel room that is now. The maiden's over there. Is that any better?
You've frozen.
See how we go. Right, what was the question?
So I
I'm freezing.
I lost my thread. Never mind. So you were telling us, you were telling us about your books, but
yeah, let me just try and go over to the other side of the room. Don't look at. I am actually doing research at the moment for books. So let me just see. Don't look at how messy my room is. Just gonna see if this is better while I sit on the bed.
oh dear, I think I might have lost it completely. Let's see what happens if I refresh.
Can you see me?
No, I've got blue screen for you, but I can hear you.
Hear me?
Can I exit and you re-hit the link?
Exit and re-hit the link. Okay, hang on.
Right, while we're waiting for her to come back, Strange Tricks is, I think it's like book 5 or 6 in the series. If you haven't read the Essex Witch Museum series, they're really good. I think all of them can be read a little bit standalone, but there is a backstory, like she was talking about, that does follow through all of the books. So it's kind of best to start with the first, and they are worth reading in order and well worth picking up if you quite like something a little bit different. So there's hints of the paranormal, there's hints of the esoteric, and obviously it's set in a witch museum, but they're not as out there as like some kind of paranormal crime books are. So if you're sort of thinking of trying something like that, the Essex Witch Museum, probably a good one to start with. Strange Tricks is possibly the darkest one yet that she's written, and we're going to ask her about that when she comes back, because there are some, there's very definite darkness going on in it. Sam, you're right. I am like a massive fan of Sid's books. I hope we get back on. I'm way calmer this time than last time I interviewed her. The first time she came on, we spent the morning that we did the promo just bouncing around the house being like, oh, yay. I'm getting to talk to Sid more. She also, while we're waiting for her to come back, is was one of the founders of the Essex Girls Liberation Front, which was aiming to show that Essex girls can be a range of things, not just the sort of stereotypical image that people have of them. And she's quite vocal about the work that she did there and Essex in general. All of her books are sort of set in that region. Oh, she's back.
Hello. Sorry.
No worries. I've just waffled on about how big a fan I am.
Right, is that better?
Much better.
Sorry, everybody. Right, I'm back. Right, can you remember at all what the question was about 10 minutes ago that you asked me?
No, but let's not worry about it. Can you tell us the news that you said you were doing some research? You said you were doing for the news sort of.
Yeah. Well, yes, I think. I mean, I can't give an official announcement yet, but suffice it to say there is going to be a new book series, which involves one of the characters who is not alive in the Essex Witch Museum series at the moment. So, and they were around during the Second World War. So there's a series which sort of looks at certainly what happened with regards to sort of MI5 in the war and the occult. So is that enough? That's a little bit of a taster, but I've been up at Farnham Castle today. Sorry, oh God, I hope you're not getting seasick. That's my knees wobbling. And I was shown around some of the places in it, which I think were used for a certain thing, which I can't reveal, but it's brilliant, really good. And yeah, really, really like Farnham. Have you ever been?
Where's Farnham?
It's Surrey. So the castle is amazing. It's not as witchy as I would have liked it to be, but it is amazing. It was full of bishops, so kind of witch finders rather than witches.
So we were talking before, well, I was waiting for you to come back about sort of your book always having a little hint of the paranormal and kind of links to witches and witchcraft and things like that. Is that something that's always interested you?
Sorry, I got links to witchcraft.
Yeah,
and
is that something
witches.
that's always interested you?
Yeah, sort of. So I don't know if I've talked about this before, but when I was a kid, excuse me, so my real name is Samantha, and so I was called Sam, and everybody used to say I was a tomboy. So I'm just going to cough. Hang on. Excuse me. Right. So yeah, everyone used to call me a tomboy, but basically because I just liked going out and being really active and playing football and war and stuff like that. And so basically, I just was quite a physical girl. I sort of get a bit annoyed when people say you're a tomboy, like being physical is a boy's thing, not a girl's thing. But anyway, blah blah blah. And I had my hair cut really, really short because I kept doing terrible things, and I was forbidden to climb the willow tree, and I got stuck up in the willow tree. I was forbidden to climb the willow tree at the bottom of the garden and chew chewing gum. So I did both, and I got my hair all caught up in the willow tree and had to be cut out because the chewing gum was in it as well, and blah blah blah. So anyhow, I was quite naughty, and as a kid, so my nan was fantastic when we were growing up, and she's from the East End. She moved down to Essex sort of after the Blitz. And she was a fantastic storyteller, and she would always tell us stories of fairy tales, me and my sister, when we were growing up. And I loved them. I was always taken. She had a wonderfully lyrical voice, but also she's quite inspired quite a lot of the Addersfork story. So she lived in a small village called Hockley, which is sort of not far from Leigh-on-Sea, it's further inland. And although she completely identified as a Christian, she thought nothing of, right, but when I was a kid, again, I was about 12, 13, and I had a wart. I've still got the scar of it sort of there. And it was a really horrible wart, and I've been to the doctors and the hospital quite a few times to have it sort of burnt off, and it didn't go. And my nan just sort of said to me one night, what are you doing with your wart? And I said, oh, it won't go. And she went, well, we have to do a spell. And so I was like, oh, really? What should we do? And so and I think it's quite a well-known sort of bit of folklore, I guess. Some people would call it a spell, some people would call it a folk cure. So what she did was she gave the wart to a piece of meat. So that means you get a piece of meat, you rub the warts on it, and you thereby give the wart to the meat. And then you go and, well, then she said that she went and buried it with 3 hairs of a black cat at midnight at the bottom of the garden where the fairies lived. And she used to have this big mound in her garden, which was always had white flowers on it. And we used to go and leave fairy cakes and things out for the fairies down there when we were little. And there were horses and things. And probably rats, I imagine, because we left so much stuff out there. But anyhow, basically, the next week it dropped off. And I'd had it for years and nothing had worked. And that, it just dropped off, just went. So I was kind of like, that's interesting. How do you do magic then? But she didn't really see it as magic. She just sort of saw it as just something that you did. And she read tea leaves. She didn't think of it as witchy. It was all kind of part of the same universe that she lived in. It was totally fine to go to church and to get picked up by, the happy young Christians who would ferry her off to the social clubs and things. Equally, it was quite fine to give your granddaughter a wart spell and, bury it down the bottom of the garden with the fairies. Anyway, all her tales as well of when we were growing up. I just naturally gravitated to the witches, really, because like I was saying, I was a bit of a tomboy, and the princesses were just like, oh God, they just sort of laid around and waited to pick them up or rescue them. And I was just like, oh my God, that's so boring, you know. But the witches, they sort of got around on broomsticks and they did spells and they had agency and they had power. And I just thought they were much more interesting to me. And then sort of as I grew up, I was still quite fascinated. I carried on fascination with them. I don't think you probably don't remember this, but I don't know if anyone watching it remembers. There was a comic called Misty in the 80s. Do you remember it, Caroline? I don't know if you got it.
No, I got comics in the 80s, but no, I don't remember that one.
It was, so basically Misty was the blue witch and she was on the front cover all the time, and it was kind of like I guess it was sort of like Tales of the Unexpected for kids in comic form, but it definitely had a female slant to it, and it had really very kind of like, you know, you look at, I've got some of them, and you look back at some of the comic strips, the stories that they did, and there's stuff like Jolly's hockey stick, which is about a possessed hockey stick. You know, they were so funny. And then this family also who were too embarrassed to say they weren't going on holiday, so they like lived in an attic and sent postcards to all the neighbours pretending they were on holiday. And then there was also lots of different things about witches and legends, and again that kind of fueled my interest. And I was interested in paganism when I got older, sort of in my early 20s. But again, I kind of like, I have a bit of a Groucho Marx take on religion, which is, you know, like him and clubs. What is it that his saying is, I wouldn't join a club that would have me as a member. And I think that's sort of the same with me in kind of religion. I'm kind of like I don't like conforming to anything really. So yeah, I just kind of sort of moved on from that, and I started looking. I was always interested in the witches, but I didn't really ever understand or know the significance of, or just how many women had lost their lives in this country to the witch hunts, because obviously you'd heard about the European witch hunts. I'd heard about Salem, but I was quite shocked to find out we'd had so many. And then to find out that in Essex, we had, you know, probably the most in England. Can I do my statistic? I don't know if it's boring, but this statistic I found out, so it was when I was researching the Dragon Pool, actually, Caroline. And so, you know, and I was like, I decided, I've got to research Sarah Moore, this really obscure woman from Leigh-on-Sea. So I put in Essex witches into Google, and then sort of obviously nothing about Sarah Moore came up, but I did find this statistic which said between 1560 and 1680 in Surrey, Hertford and Sussex, there were 185 indictments for witchcraft. For the same period of time, Essex on its own had 503. So you can see just how much of a disparity there was. Essex had lost loads and loads of people to lots of different witch hunts. Obviously, there was Matthew Hopkins in 1645 to 1647, who was basically a serial killer. Who went around and got paid as well for killing women. So yeah, and one of the things that really struck me was that so many people knew about Matthew Hopkins, but then I was asking people, do you know any names of any of the women that he killed? And you know, conservative estimates, we know there were at least 230, but a lot of women didn't make it to the gallows. They either died in jail or they died because of the tests, in inverted commas, tests that he carried out to see if they were witches, which were really awful. So he would do the one of the first things that you would do if you were trying to find out if a woman was a witch was you would subject her to the swimming test. So your right thumb would be tied to your left toe, and then you'd be pushed into a body of water. So if you floated, then you were guilty. But if you sank and probably drowned, then it's all right because you were innocent and not a witch. So your soul would go to heaven. And then after that, you'd be basically, Matthew Hopkins was obsessed with something called the Devil's Mark, which was like an impurity. Trying to think if I've got loads of impurities on my body. So just trying to give you an example. It could be a birthmark, it could be a scar, it could be a flea bite, it could be a spot, it could be a mole, it could be a prickle, anything that was not particularly pure. And then, so if you'd been swum and you floated, so you were guilty, you'd then be stripped and shaved, and then you would be pricked all over your body to see if you bled, and then your witch mark, the impure place on your body, would be pricked to see if it bled, because this was allegedly where you fed your familiars, your demonic imps who helped you go about your Maleficarum. So what would happen is, yeah, blood, but you know, aha, there's a freckle. They'd often prick it, because there was a kind of financial motivation about being able to find women who were witches. A lot of the witch prickers used, they used the blades, which had retractable, had knives that had retractable blades that went up into the handle. So quite often, you know, the witch would scream, blood. Ah, here is the witch spot. They would then stab it, remove it, there would be no blood, and the witch wouldn't have felt anything going, so she wouldn't. So that meant that it was inhuman, because this is how she fed her diabolical imps. So diabolical, inhuman if it didn't bleed. So then after that, you'd have to confess. So you'd be walked up and down, basically, for days and nights until you confessed. You'd be sort of strapped onto 2 men of the parish and then literally walked up and down in a confined space. So without rest, without food, without water, without sleep. Or you'd be watched. So you'd be tied, your hands would be tied behind your back and your feet would be tied, and you'd be sat on a very small squat stool, and then you'd be watched. So this would go on again for days and nights. So if you can imagine, you know, you think about one of the first women who was accused of witchcraft, her name was Elizabeth Clark, and she lived in Manningtree, and she was 80. And I kind of like, you look at her testimony, and as soon as I looked at her, I just thought, God, she's got dementia. She's poor old love, she's got dementia. She had one leg as well. And she was watched, for 3 days and 3 nights and confessed on the 4th. So if you think about this 80-year-old, one-legged old woman, kept without food, water, being able to go to the toilet, kept awake for all of that time, and the 4th night she confessed. And that's kind of like what happens to most of the women. So she found guilty because of the test, and then confessed. And of course, Matthew Hopkins, it was in his interest to find out who the other witches were. So he asked her, who else were the witches at this meeting that you went to? And so he would continue to keep poor people until they volunteered other names. And that's kind of how the witch hunt, the hysteria, spread across Essex and East Anglia, and even went up to Northampton. Because it was just people just, you know, starting to name their neighbours, just basically, I think, because they just wanted to be untied and get out of that position, or have some sleep, or have a glass of water. But then, of course, once they confessed, they were taken to Colchester jail, and they were kept there for quite a long time. And the jail was really, really horrible. You know, they had jail fever, which was sort of like jaundice and typhoid. Rats. If someone died in jail, because they were often chained to the wall, the family would have to come and get her. And if the bills, because also if you were jailed in prison, you had to pay for your bread and water. So if you didn't pay for bread and water, then you didn't get any. And if you died, quite often they left the body there to just, make sure that everyone else was not having a great time. The family would want to retrieve it, of course, if there was family. But a lot of the witches didn't have family. Certainly not in the Matthew Hopkins era. It was 1645 to 1647 was the Civil War. So a lot of the men, he stuck to small villages as well. He didn't really go near towns because there were people who had more authority there, but he stuck to places where there was the illiterate peasants and, basically cleaned up all of the old dears that were unpopular, or the young women, anyone really who was accused. But he did this, and he sort of went on, and as I said, it's possible that he killed up to 450 people. Well, it could be even more, because if you died through the swimming test, if you died because of the witch pricks, if you died because of any of the other tests, then you wouldn't have got to court. So your name wouldn't ever register. The poor, unfortunately, the illiterate poor, only can be found in history if they go to court, because they don't leave any evidence, they don't leave any gravestones, they just slip through history, and a lot of the witches, unfortunately, did that. So I guess one of the things that I've realised I'm talking for ages, but one of the things that is really important to me is to at least find the names of those women and men and some children, unfortunately, who were murdered during this very long and terrible time, and to give them a voice, to give them a voice, a presence in history. Commemorate the victims, because the other thing that I do is I work with Christy Brimelow QC, and well, before lockdown we were going around and we were talking about witchcraft. I would do the kind of witchcraft in the past, and Kirsty would do witchcraft in the present, because unfortunately it is going on all around the world. I don't think there's a country that has not got people who are being harmed because of belief in witchcraft. A lot of it is linked to trafficking as well. But anyhow, we've got it over here too. And Kirsty, I'm also an ambassador for a Danish charity called Land of Hope, who are brilliant, and you can support them by giving them £2 a month if you want to. But they have an orphanage in Nigeria, because in Nigeria, it's children who are commonly accused of witchcraft, and if there's something going wrong in the village and a child is accused of witchcraft, then they get turned out or sometimes killed, because they think once they get rid of the witch, then the bad fortune will go away. But yes, it's all over the place, and it's here. It's here. Leytonstone in London has got a Witchfinder channel where they advertise the services of exorcists who could get rid of the witches that are possessing children and jinns, and yeah, there you go. So it's still happening now, here and all over the world. So it's not a thing of the past, and kind of what it's about is a lot of with the women, it's about scapegoating and bullying and intolerance, and I think the children, it's about exploiting people and superstitions, again, like Matthew Hopkins did, for profit, because a lot of the people who are saying that they can exorcise the children to get rid of the witches, to get the witch out of them, they will charge money for it, and it's not cheap, £300. So why are they doing that? Why? Because they're making a profit, just like Matthew Hopkins did back then. And I'm going to stop talking now, because that was really, really long.
It was a really good answer, though. Kelly Clayton, one of our author members, says she remembers Misty.
Who's that?
Kelly Clayton. She's one
Kelly
of
Clayton. I've just seen it.
Yeah, she also said she just got Strange Magic literally 2 minutes ago and is looking for.
Oh, brilliant! Hey, Kelly, that's Strange Magic. It's got Strange Magic. Brilliant. Thank you. I really look. Yeah. Please let me know what you think of it. Oh, I've just seen all these comments now. Okay. What is happening with your first 2 books? It would be nice to see them back in print again. Tell me about it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really hard to get hold of.
Yeah, I know. I mean, they used to be in print. It's because it's a different publisher. So that's HarperCollins and Essex Witch Museum or One World. I keep also wanting to see if we could do audiobooks of The Drowning Pool and Witch Hunt, but because they've never been made into audiobooks. But it's just it's about negotiating with a very big publisher. Yeah. So, I can't really say much, but yeah, I'd like them to come back into print too. It is. I'll tell you what, as an author, it is really frustrating when you can't get your books into print and you can't buy the rights off or get the rights back to sort of give them to someone else who would put them into print. I don't know why they do that, but yeah, it just happens. I will get them eventually. I will, as you know, Caroline, when I put my mind to something, I do get it done, like removing obviously the Essex Girl from the dictionary. So I will put my mind to getting these titles back in print, Facebook user. So I will get them back for you. And you said also it would be nice to see, oh yeah, no, hang on. You've written 6 witch books. Have you got any plans to write something that is not a witch book? Yeah, I'd quite like to, actually. I'd really like to write a kind of like a standalone crime thriller. See what happens when I don't write anything supernatural. Probably end up the ghost did it, but you know, I'll give it a go.
I was going to say, I reckon something supernatural would still creep in. Drowning Pool.
Okay.
When we talked about Drowning Pool, didn't we, when we did the promo? Because I bought a copy, just purely because when I really like a series or books by an author, I will just go and buy everything.
Thank you. You're the best type of reader.
Working my way, just need to find Witch Hunt now. And there's a scene in Drowning Pool that is in my mind now every time I do an interview.
Yeah, I know what you're going to say. Yeah, and I don't know, is it a spoiler to say it? It probably is, isn't it?
Yeah, maybe we might have to leave that and make people read it. I know.
Yeah. Well, do you know what? I think I said to you, so many people have just come back to me and said, "Oh my God, you know, I can't," because of the lockdown and everyone's using Skype and everything. They're like, "Oh my God, I can't." Anyone who's reading it at the moment is like, God, I can't do Skype anymore. When it came out in 2011, and I did do a talk to a English school in Madrid. Actually, I went to Madrid actually and did a talk about it. But I did before that, I did do a talk to them on Skype, and I got my husband to participate in a big black robe at the end of it, just to walk past it. So they'd obviously all read it and they were like, you know what I'm talking about, but I'm sorry everyone else, you'll have to read the book if you can find it.
Yeah, good luck. So Strange Tricks, back to Strange Tricks.
Yes.
I feel like it's the darkest one yet.
Yes, it definitely is. Yes. I wanted to make it dark because, so you've read all of them, haven't you, Caroline? So there's a kind of like, I think it sort of goes, I mean, Strange Magic it has light and darkness in it, but actually, because it's about another witch who was persecuted in 1582, Ursula Kemp, and because of what happened to her, that it's got darkness in it. whenever you're talking about the witch hunts, it's got darkness in it, because, you know, it was an awful time. And if you can imagine what happened to those poor women who knew they weren't witches. Anyway, it is just horrific. So Strange Magic, light and dark, because of Ursula Kemp and her story. Strange Sight, it's quite funny actually, but also then it has got a darker side to it in terms of exploitation and what is the real story. The answer to the mystery is quite dark. Strange Fascination is, I really loved writing it. It's just a bit of a party. It's set in Addersthorpe, where the Witch Museum is, and I found that really, it was such a joy to write. I loved it. I opened it with a party, and although I think there was a review, I don't always read all my reviews, but there was a review said there was too much Prosecco in it.
Is that a thing?
Huh?
Is that a thing? Too much Prosecco?
No, review would like it. But also, I remember when I did the Drowning Pool as well. One of my first ever author events was at my old school, and there was like some of the mothers of the pupils. It was girls' school, and there were some of the mums there, and I got taken in to talk to them at the reading club, and they were all saying, right, okay, so we're here to discuss the Sid's Drowning Pool. So does anyone want to go back with feedback? The first person went, I thought it was outrageous how much the central character drinks. I wouldn't like my daughter to have that, to drink that much. I think it's shocking. You should be ashamed of yourself. And I was just like, but apparently there is a lot of booze in it. But that's also because a lot of non-booze scenes were cut out. So it's quite a lot of booze stuff. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. Guys, Strange Fascination was very light, really. Although, again, the mystery is quite dark and you find out a lot about Rose's backstory. But it's quite light. It's it's a summer book. It's a sort of fun, summery, country-ish book with dark issues, of course, and murder. And then Strange Tombs was also kind of like a country house murder, but about a writing retreat. Again, there was darkness there, but I don't think too much. Murder's a bit dark, I suppose, but not too much. And then I kind of felt that after Strange Fascination and Strange Tombs, I needed to get kind of like serious again about some issues, and also I wanted to explore Sam and answer, because a lot of people ask me about Sam and his motivations and what's going on, and I kind of thought, right, okay, this one's for him then, really, and it looks at why the reasons why he might become interested in desperately finding out if there's an afterlife. So that's sort of what's explored, and ironically it's Rosie who kind of finds that out, not Sam. You're with me, aren't you, Caroline?
I am with you, yeah.
And that twist as well, that kind of like, I didn't really plan it, just as soon as I started plotting the novel, it was just there. It was just part of the story almost immediately, as soon as it was like the whole idea came into my head all at once. But my mum has told me off it because she said it really shocked her and it made her cry.
You don't see it coming. It's just, I was reading
Have you read it twice?
Not yet. No.
Yeah. Someone said you
got to the end and I was like,
yeah, a couple of people have said after they got to the end, they were like, oh my God. So then they read it twice. And it kind of, obviously, the way I wrote it was so that it would work, but didn't see the hints and anyway. I can't really say anything else about it.
Otherwise, no, you don't really give it away.
Yeah. But yes, Mum told me off for it. She said she didn't like. She always tells me off for my book. So this one, she didn't like Rosie lusting over Dorcas. She just thought it was terrible. and she didn't like the ending. And she said also, so my mum is a Sunday school teacher, and she told me off because apparently there was too many Jesus Christs in the book. So she told me I've got to be careful with that next time. So I will.
I have a theory about Dorcas. I'll keep it to myself.
Oh, about Dorcas.
Hmm.
Oh yeah.
It's probably completely wrong, but I have a little theory about him.
Oh yeah. You'll have to email me.
Yeah. After you'll get a message.
Yeah.
Someone's asked if you're right.
Sorry about my camera.
Okay. Someone's asked if you're right. Someone's asked if you write in silence or have music playing in the background.
That's an interesting question. Where I live in Lee, it's sort of just off the main Broadway, and there's a cafe called Stop the World, and they have jazz playing outside now that they're open again. I can just about tolerate that, but apart from that, it's silence for me. Although I do other things with music on, and I find that I had the screenplay that I've written sort of came about. Again, it's looking at one of the Matthew Hopkins, one of the witches that he persecuted. Excuse me. And I kind of like the whole idea about that came to me when I was listening to the stage version of Kate Bush's Ninth Wave. So the performance that she did, because I was meant to go to that, and I got food poisoning. No, I got a virus, and I couldn't go. And my ticket was like 160 quid, and I was like, I'd been there, pressing buy as soon as they were announced. And so I only had to go to it. Someone brought me the CD of the performance for my Christmas present, and I couldn't play it for years because I was just so gutted about missing her. And then eventually I did put it on, and I think I was doing my tax return, and one of the songs on it, which I don't know if anyone's familiar with, Kate Bush's The Ninth Wave. There's a song called Waking the Witch, and it's really, part of it in the middle is like really hectic. So she's got loads of different effects, and it kind of like sounds like chaos, and there's also this kind of like demonic voice going, guilty. And as I was listening to it, it really, for me, it captured that feeling of being completely out of control and surrounded by chaos, and just like not understanding what is going on, and just having to run through this tunnel of people who are just trying to hurt you. I realized at that moment that for years and years and years, I've loved that album, like since the 90s, and I've played it, and I always thought it was like this kind of demon voice, which never really scared me. But on the stage play, I just suddenly heard that it was a witchfinder. I don't know why I'd never thought of it before, but I just suddenly heard that, and the whole screenplay just came into my head. I just thought, I've got to try and represent what it is like for those women in a period. I thought, because a lot of my stuff is contemporary with flashbacks or sort of time slips. And I just thought, I want to write this period. First of all, I thought I'd write it as a book, but then the director approached me, so I wrote it as a screenplay. And that completely came about because of that moment when I was listening to the music. But I was doing my tax return, so I wasn't writing. But when I write, I think in the past I have put music on, but it finishes and I don't notice because I'm in the zone. I think it would distract me, I think, too much. And where I live is quite, like I said, it's quite noisy and busy anyway, so filtering out all of that is quite hard. That's another long answer, sorry.
What can you tell us about the screenplay?
Oh, well, it's I mean, it was options a few years ago. All the funding, all the finance is in. We're due to start filming on April the 1st, 2020. Obviously, we locked down 1 week before that. So I've got a meeting with the director and the producer next week. Hopefully, touch wood, if there's wood around here, we should hopefully filming this summer. But again, you know, it all depends on what COVID and the variant does, and it's kind of really strange world that we're living in at the moment, isn't it, with things like that. I mean, I'm lucky that I can carry on writing because I'm doing it on my own, but I think, you know, with the screenplay, because it's set in 1645, and we've got scenes in the castle, in the dungeon, where you've got, like, you know, 35 women in a space which is probably about 5 meters by 4 meters. There's no way you can socially distance there, and it's not, you know, they don't want to spend loads and loads of their budget on getting the tests done, the PCT tests done every time, so, which I completely understand. So if we continue to come out of lockdown, then it will be filmed hopefully over the summer and autumn. But if we don't, then next year, maybe. I don't know. I really want it to come out because it's called Witch West, by the way. And there is, I think, a Twitter feed already for it. And I think it's brilliant. I know I wrote it, but I really do think it's a really important film. I really hope it can get done because, again, it's like I said, you know, we kind of tend to look at the witch hunts of the past and go, well, you know, we're 400 years on from all of that. We're fine now. But of course, we're not. As a civilization, we're doing it everywhere, all over the place. And that is real, proper witch hunts. You know, think about the metaphor of witch hunts as well, and othering other people, which has occurred over the past year. You know, it's something, maybe, is it something in the human condition? I don't know, that makes people want to blame other people for things they don't understand. I don't know, but I think it's important to point it out so that we can notice it within ourselves. Sorry, turned into a preacher now. I need to crack a note.
When eventually Witch West is produced, is it going to be on normal TV, a streaming service? Do you know where it would be?
No, I don't at the moment. It's going to be a feature film, so I don't know. I don't think they know. I can't really say much about the casting other than someone has been cast who will ensure good distribution into the central role, which is good. So, but I assume good distribution. I would assume that means cinemas, but I mean, is anyone going to the cinema at the moment?
I can't remember the last thing I saw at the cinema.
I don't know. What do you think? Is it better to go on to something like Netflix and Amazon, or is it better to go into the cinema?
Selfishly, I would say Netflix and Amazon.
Would you?
Just because they're what I watch.
So. Yeah, I suppose there's nothing like sort of going into film festivals and things like that. And I think that was their plan as well, to get it into film festivals to see if it could get awards. But I don't know what's happening with any of it. Again, I repeat, it's just such a weird place we find ourselves in at the moment that it's difficult to make plans for the future, isn't
it? Kelly says she thinks Netflix is a huge audience.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, the only thing with Netflix is, to me, it feels like it's not long lasting. Like, you know, the other day I showed my son American Beauty, which I think is a brilliant film. And I remember seeing it at the cinema, and it got loads of awards, and it still resonates, and it's kind of like, because it got loads of awards, it sort of lingers on in the memory more. And I've watched loads of brilliant films on Netflix, but I can't really remember them all the time. You know, there's lots of brilliant films, but nothing kind of like that I can imagine that I will be talking about in 10 years' time, like I am with American Beauty.
Maybe a combo, so a cinema release, and then lots of people are doing that, aren't they now? Like a cinema release and then a streaming service release as well. That seems to be a new thing with COVID.
To be honest, you know, I'm lucky to be in this situation at all. So I'm really grateful with whatever happens. But obviously, I want it to be enduring. I don't want it to be a throwaway thing, because just because of my, because I think it's got a really important moral, ethical message to it. But there you go. You can't tell that I was the daughter of a Sunday school teacher and a policeman, can you? I haven't got that moral drive at all.
What authors would you like to co-write with?
Oh my God. That's really interesting. I don't know. I always had a thing about Jay McInerney, because I remember reading My Life Story, The Story of My Life, and Bright Lights, Big City in the 90s. And I just thought they were just so brilliant, really amazing books, and so vibrant and sort of zingy. And I always thought that he would be a really interesting person to write with, but I don't know anymore. I think he's kind of got a bit, I think he's just got older, actually. I think I love Irvine Welsh's stuff as well. I tell you who I'd love to co-write a book with, that would be Bulgakov, who wrote The Master and Margarita. But, you know, The Master and Margarita is one of my absolutely most favorite books, just because it's so imaginative and just so bonkers and creative. I think he'd be really interesting to work with. I don't know if you could anything with him though. I think he would probably take over, or would have a punch up or something and fight. But also there's, you know, obviously loads of female writers that I would want to work with, and I'm just trying to think of who they are at the moment, and also thinking of quite a few of the female writers that I do know. I was thinking the other day about co-writing a book with someone, but I can't remember who it is. Oh yeah, I know who it is, but I'm not going to say who it is because I might coach them.
Fair enough. Well, we'll wait for that news. Love The Master and the Margarita.
It's so brilliant. I actually taught a unit this year for Anglia Ruskin Creative Writing, the novel module, and I got the students to study that, The Master and Margarita, and some of them were kind of frightened by it. They kind of like it was just too crazy for them. They couldn't work out what was going on, or some of them were bored by the first part as well. But you know, I'm glad you like it, because yeah, some of them were just like, wow, this is the craziest book I've ever written. It's an interesting book that sort of, it takes you from kind of like looking at the insanity of what was going on in Russia, but also, you know, at the same time, you look at the times now and you feel that they are quite insane with bureaucracy and what's going on as well. But it's got that element of satire, it's got that element of farce, of humour, it's quite cruel, it's quite wicked, but at the same time it's beautiful, and the pathos that exists in it and the writing is lyrical and wonderful, and leads you into a really unusual place. And you know, at the end of that book I was blubbing with like really heartfelt tears, with the kind of Pontius Pilate storyline. It's a really, that book has the ability to trigger so many emotions, I think, in the reader. It's astonishing, really astonishing.
True. My heart lies with Dostoevsky. He's my favourite one.
Yeah. Well, Dostoevsky, obviously, he's great, and I do quote him quite a lot when I'm doing the novels. But who wrote Anna Karenina? Was it Tolstoy? Yeah. So I really love Anna Karenina as well. I think that again, that's, I don't know if it's when you read these books. Some of the, sometimes I think I've read them just at the right time when I was kind of feeling really kind of passionate and creative, and it kind of like strikes a chord of harmony within you. And it never lets you go, does it? When it does that, when a good book does something like that, it always kind of stays within your soul, I kind of think, unless that's too kind of ripply. But yeah, I love Anna Karenina. That had again, maybe it's because I read it in my 20s and I wasn't sure what I was doing with my life, but and her kind of like chaos sort of could understand it. But yeah, I used to love the Russians as well, and I did write a play when I was doing a degree about the Russian dissident poet Irina Rakhtishinskaya, who was imprisoned in Siberia for writing poetry. Yeah, Russian poets really interesting. Really, I like Russian literature, but sometimes I find it quite hard to read and difficult. But that doesn't mean she didn't read it. I also was reading Jilly Cooper, I might add. Bella and Harriet and Octavia and all of those. I think it's really good to be a kind of a book omnivore, though, don't you? I'm sure everybody does. It's good to sort of have your lightness and dark catered for in lots of different genres, I think.
Yeah.
Although, obviously, this is Crime Book Club, and we all love crime here. We all love crime.
We do. Yeah, book omnivores are a good thing. We're out of time. Do you want to finish us off with a reminder of your books?
Right, you just went wah, wah, wah. So can you say that again? Sorry.
I said we're out of time. Do you want to finish us off with a reminder of your book?
It's over there. There, I'm on the bed now. Where is it? Hang on. I'll go and get it. Hang on. Don't look at my messy hotel room. Right. Oh, look, there's my boobs. Right. Look, this is where I was today as well. Farnham Castle. It's really interesting. Yeah. Very interesting, that, actually. So the Strange Tricks. So Strange Tricks, the strapline is, well, I don't know if you agree with this, Caroline, better left dead. It's ambiguous, isn't it? And Strange Tricks, I am advised. So there was a blog tour about it, and I am advised from the blogger reviewers that it can be read as a standalone. It's a story on its own in its own right. But obviously, if you do read some of the other books, then you'll get a bit more of an enhanced understanding of different elements of the plot. But it's, yeah, as a story, you can read it on its own as well. So, and it's out now in all good bookshops and online. And can I just say to everybody that next week is Independent Bookstore Week, so please go and buy it at your local independent bookstore. Thank you.
I don't have an independent bookstore, sorry. I just thought mine up.
They are a dying breed, aren't they? I mean, we used to have two in Leigh, and they've gone. Both of them have gone, and I can't think of any in Southend. So I've been into the independent bookshop here in Farnham and signed some copies there. And I'll do tweet about them next week. But isn't it such a shame that they're all going? The indies, it's just, devastating, really. I suppose it's a combination of things and COVID now as well. But thank you, Caroline. I know you got it because you tweeted a photo of you actually buying it at the till.
Which is good to be buying it. I was like, yay!
Very, very much appreciated. Thank you.
You're welcome. And thank you for coming and joining us.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you to all of your people who have put the questions up the side. I haven't seen them all because I didn't even realise that was there. But yeah, I am on Twitter, I'm at SydMoore1. So if anybody wants to ask me any more questions that I haven't been able to answer, then please do tweet me, and we can have a conversation. But it's been lovely to speak to you as always. You're such a darling and so comfortable. And thank you for putting up with my dodgy Wi-Fi internet connection and my messy hotel bedroom.
Thanks for being here.
Well, thank you very much for having me and